talk to you.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another pod exclusive. I am Razorback Zach alongside my broadcast partner, brother, mentor, and yes, it has been professionally proven, the glue that holds the whole damn thing together, Marcus MC Carlton. What's up, MC?
Hey, man, how's it going?
Oh, talking a little football, man. A little football.
Yeah.
We'll be joined later on this episode with our executive producer from Thursday nights, Jesse the Beard Thurman. But MC, tonight, three of us kind of came together and we wanted to do a podcast series on the different Arkansas rivals. Well, for me, and I know you're an old school kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's always been Texas.
Yep.
In football. But for somebody like me, I grew up in the era of the Golden Boot. You know, but I also know I'm also one of those that, yes, Texas is a rival. Horns down, I will never pick them for anything, no matter who they're playing. No matter if I know they're going to win or not, I will never pick Texas. And I know you're the same way, just like we do on SEC Pick'em on Thursday nights.
Yeah, there's just some lines I won't cross.
This is part one of a two-part episode where we're talking about the University of Arkansas versus the University of Texas. All right. Now, the current record as it stands today is 56-23 in favor of the University of Texas. 0 ties. However, Arkansas owns the current win streak. They have played a grand total of 2 times, about to be 3, since 2014. They played them in the Houston, Texas, in the Advocare V100 Texas Bowl, where Arkansas just kicked the crap out of them, 31-7.
Yeah, that was fun. That was the was that the where the borderline erotic comment came from?
Yeah, that was borderline erotic. And then again, they came in on 9/11/2021. I was there for that game, and that was 40-21. And we rushed the field there, and that place had capacity crowd. But, you know, and this one will go through, this episode will go through the Southwest Conference, the early days of the rivalry and how that kind of rivalry kind of formed. And there's been a lot of important games. I mean, this thing goes back to 1894, MC. 1894. Were you around then?
I was not. Contrary to popular belief, that was just a tad bit before my time.
But get this, you know, this rivalry formed because from 1894 until 1932, we got the crap beat out of us.
Yeah, it wasn't much of a rivalry for a while, and it took quite a while for Arkansas to get their first victory. And you know, I mean, I don't know much about those days. I mean, this is back. I think some of this even predates John Barnhill as the AD, obviously. But it was, you know, mid-30s before Arkansas got a win in this series. They were few and far between.
I'm doing a little math at the moment. Well, anyway, yeah, I know, right? If you see smoke, you know, send the fire department. Anyway, I'm not going to do all that math. What I'm going to tell you is, in that time span, 1894 to 1932, Arkansas only scored 20 points.
Golly, that's not good. I mean,
14 games and we've only scored 20 points.
Chad Morris thinks that's not good.
You had to bring that up, didn't you? You couldn't let it die.
I mean, I couldn't think of a better way to emphasize just how terrible that was.
Smile. I don't know. It just, for me, I mean, you know, when you think of rivalry games, you think of you know, excuse me. You think of Auburn, Alabama. You think of Florida State.
Yeah.
LSU, Tulane, Army, Navy.
I mean, for me, the Egg Bowl's up there too, man. There's a lot. That's a good one as well.
But the one you don't hear about, Arkansas and Texas.
Right.
Why is that?
I just think they went so long without playing that a lot of people, pretty much anybody under the age of like 35, they don't understand the meaning behind this game.
No.
They don't understand, what happened in 1969 with the big shootout. They don't understand Arkansas beating Texas 1964, 1965, 1966. They don't understand the hold that this game had on the state for so long.
Right.
And I know we're kind of jumping around because we went from the 30s up to the 60s, but to me, the 1960s, when you had Frank Broyles and Darrell Royal going head to head, that was where where it really became a rivalry, to where it really started meaning something to Texas too.
And that's about the point where it took off. But here's an interesting note. They played in Little Rock 6 times between 1936 and 1945. War Memorial wasn't built until 1948. So where did they play? I find that interesting. And then I want to bring Jesse in on this because there's one game that stands out among all of these. As I'm going through the list here, most of them have been played in Austin and Fayetteville, correct?
Yeah.
On October 18th, 1947, is the only time outside of a bowl game that Arkansas and Texas have ever played on a neutral site. Memphis, Tennessee. Jesse, tell me why we had to play in Memphis and the significance behind why that game was there and how it impacted Arkansas, the University of Arkansas.
All right. So that game was played because Secretary of State Crip Paul had championed a 1-cent cigarette tax to help finance the construction of War Memorial Stadium. However, support remained weak until Barnhill decided to move the 1947 game to Crump Stadium in Memphis in hopes that greater gate receipts would save the university's athletic department financially. And that ended up being a key factor in getting all that done. And also, Zach, one reason I think that our rivalry with Texas is not treated like a lot of other schools is really in the last, I'm going to say, I remember being able to watch Razorbacks on antenna television when I was younger. TV has just gotten big, and I'd say the last 20 years or so would be a fair statement.
Right.
Yeah.
And they haven't been a conference rival in the last 20 years. In the last 20 years, we've played, 5 or 6 times?
Yeah.
I think that's another factor.
And there's a lot of factors that play into that. And one of the things, too, is, and I'd love to get a Texas fan point of view, even though, Texas sucks. But I'd love to get a Texas fan's point of view of all of this, because we might consider them a rival, but Texas apparently doesn't.
No, I don't think they do anymore. I think if you talk to some of the old heads, and by old heads, I mean people that are a little bit older than me, I think you would find a few that would admit, yeah, at one time this was a rival, but they're never going to admit that it was bigger than either Oklahoma or Texas A&M. But I think that they would,
right?
They would give it some credence if you talk to guys that maybe lived through the big shootout.
Well, and I think, you had Arkansas winning the national championship in '64.
Right.
But I don't think it really took off until the '69 shootout. I mean, you know more than I do about this, MC. But
yeah, I mean, you could make an argument that the '64 game was kind of the beginning of it, because, I mean, Arkansas goes down to Texas in 1964, pulls an upset because Ken Hatfield returned to punt. Yes, that Ken Hatfield that was later on to be coach. He had a huge punt return for a touchdown that ended up being the difference in the game. I believe Arkansas won 14-13. 14-13. And that was a huge upset because at that time, Texas was number 1 team in the country. So then you turn right around in 1965, and it's the same scenario. Texas is number 1 in the country, but this time Arkansas is number 3. So, and Arkansas is technically defending national champions at that point, depending on, which set of voters you listen to. There was a rule change that happened after the 1964 season because the national championship was declared before the bowl game.
Right.
Well, they declared Texas national champion. Texas went on to lose their bowl game. And so Alabama and Arkansas both lay claim to the national championship in 64 because the two sets of polls that you had at that time, you actually had three polls. You had the Football Writers Association, you had the AP, and you had the UPI. UPI is the one that determined their national championship before the bowl game because bowls were seen as an exhibition at that point. So they declared Texas. Texas goes on to lose their bowl game to, I believe, was Notre Dame, and I'm going from memory on this. Arkansas and Alabama both win their bowl games. So one picks Arkansas, one picks Alabama. So you have the split national championship. Well, after that season, it was determined, hey, nobody can name a national champion until after the bowl game. So that's essentially what cost Arkansas from being able to repeat in 1965 because Arkansas went undefeated through the regular season and then lost their bowl game to, I believe it was LSU of all people.
Why am I not surprised by that?
Yeah.
Why am I not surprised?
Long time thorn in the side.
MC, I'm gonna throw this thing to Jesse real quick. Jesse, you've kind of got a Texas's fan point of view that we talked about a few minutes ago. Tell me why Texas doesn't look at Arkansas and go, "That's our rival." That is considered a big rival, I should say.
I'm not going to name drop here, but this is a Texas fan that is in their 60s, can't stand Arkansas fans, and they think Arkansas ran scared to the SEC instead of staying with the Southwest Conference when, as Arkansas fans, we know Texas killed that conference.
100%.
So that's kind of their take on it, but there again, like I always say, Sark said it best.
Well, but I mean the amount of hatred that Arkansas fans have toward Texas is sometimes, I mean, it's
unhealthy.
I was going to say that's the word I was going to use. It was unhealthy.
Yeah, it's a little unhealthy, and there's probably a little bit of therapy needed there. But
a little
to kind of put it in perspective, though, my uncle, who you've heard me talk about him on the show, he's who I get my tickets from. He's the guy that took me to my first Razorback football game. He's the reason I'm the fan I am today. And I'm going to have to bring up a bad memory here for comparison, but it'll make sense while I'm bringing it up. So the College World Series game that none of us like to talk about because it still hurts too bad and will forever hurt too bad.
Oh, God.
So I was talking to my uncle the night that all that went down. I texted him after it was over, and I asked him, I was like, how does this compare to the big shootout, which was 69 Texas, Arkansas, number 1 versus number 2? I said, if it was anything like this, I don't know how you live through it. And without hesitation, he immediately texted back. He said, this game is nothing compared to how bad the 69 shootout hurt. So that right there, to me, that really put it in perspective because I thought I had a good feel for the rivalry and why Arkansas fans hate Texas so much and, just why that game always was what it was. But when he put it in that perspective for me, that was really an eye-opener for me because I didn't know that I could experience any more pain than what I felt that night of the College World Series game. But for him to say it was no comparison when he's lived through both of them was just a real shocker for me. And I mean, there's so much. There is so much that goes around that game. I mean, there was an entire book written about that 69 shootout game, Hogs, Horns, and Nixon's Coming. It was unheard of for a sitting president to come to a college football game in 1969. I can't imagine the nightmare that Secret Service had, trying to prepare for that because let's put another aspect on that. At that 69 shootout game, you're 6 years removed from when Kennedy got assassinated. So to have a sitting president go to Fayetteville, Arkansas for a college football game where you're essentially and there were no suites. There were no, high roller boxes, as I call them back then. He was setting out in the general public. So, I mean, I can't imagine what all went into that. But that just added to the hype because this game had already been moved from a mid-October game to the last game of the season by ABC because they rolled the dice and said, these are the two best teams in college football. They're both going to be undefeated. Let's move this to the end of the season and get as many eyeballs on this as possible.
And that was a smart move by them. But
that was genius. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this is, I mean, it boils down to that 69 game.
Yeah.
Now, the key to that is that's where curse comes into play.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much where I feel like the curse begins because, Arkansas loses that game 15-14. Arkansas got up 14-0 in that game and had an opportunity to go up bigger and couldn't capitalize on a turnover. You have, there are some old timers that talk about a phantom pass interference call that set up the famous Texas street to Peschel play that ended up being the game winner touchdown. And it's just kind of grows from there because after that game, Arkansas had so many games against Texas to where they had a crucial turnover at the absolute worst time, or they missed a field goal, just so many heartbreaks. I mean, you think about, I think it was the 1985 game where Ken Hatfield had his famous Jesus wept quote. Greg Horn, he was basically the Cam Little of his time. He was a rock solid field goal kicker, and he missed either 4 or 5 kicks in that game, and Arkansas loses by 2 points. I mean, and Texas was unranked in that game. Arkansas was number 4 in the country, looking for a major New Year's Day bowl, and that one just kind of derailed everything. So I mean, these games have been all over the place, and that's where the 60 to go back to that 69 game, it just kind of set a lot of bad things in motion. And Arkansas between, from 1966 when Arkansas won, they did not win again until 1971, and then after that, they did not win again in this series until 1979 in Little Rock, when number 10 Arkansas upsets number 2 Texas 17-14. And then 1980 Texas gets them, and then 1981 was.
I was just going to say the biggest one in recent history.
Arguably the biggest one in series history since the 60s was
that 81 game.
Yes.
Now, tell me why that one is so significant, because most people don't understand, because they think, oh, well, it was, Arkansas won, big whoop. But what's the significance behind that?
So Texas came into that game number 1. Arkansas was unranked. I've watched highlights of this game. Texas played horribly, had, I think, 3 turnovers in the first quarter alone. I think they ended up with 6 turnovers for the whole game. Arkansas beat them 42-11 in Fayetteville in 1981 as an unranked team beating number 1. Unranked beating number 1 is big enough, but that game still stands today as the largest margin of victory of an unranked team over a number 1 ranked team. And I mean, guys, you're talking 45 years or 43, 44 years ago now, and it's still the record for the largest margin of victory. That's why that one sticks out so much. And because Texas had dominated the series throughout the 70s, Arkansas was just, I don't want to say they were hopeless at that point, but you couldn't have a whole lot of hope because even at that point, the hog gonna hog, it pretty much came out of Texas games. It's like, okay, well, how are we going to screw this up and lose it? Because Arkansas had so many heartbreakers against Texas. And they win in 81, and it's like you're exercising a lot of demons in the just the absolute beatdown that game became.
You want to fast forward, about a decade in 1991.
Yeah.
And, in part 2, we'll cover from the 2000 Cotton Bowl to current.
And there's some good details around that 2000 Cotton Bowl game too. There's a lot around that.
There is now 1991.
Yes.
was the final conference game between these two in the Southwest Conference. And then there's not another game from then until that 2000 game.
Until the millennium. I mean, how about that, man? I mean, it's just, a lot of people forget about that now because it's been 24, almost 25 years ago. But they didn't play until the turn of the millennium after that 1991 game in Little Rock. And if you talk to anybody that was there, I mean, again, I go back, talk to my uncle because he was there. He said that game was probably one of the most emotional games he'd ever been a part of because you were closing a chapter on Razorback football history that had been the foundation of Razorback football, the Arkansas-Texas rivalry. And at that point, you didn't know when or if you were going to get to play Texas again. Right. So to pull that upset in Little Rock, it really was a fitting ending. I mean, he talked about, there are people shedding tears in the stands. The band played All My Exes Live in Texas because at that time it was, public that Arkansas was leaving the Southwest Conference to head to the SEC. And not knowing the mystery of the unknown, not knowing when or if you were going to be able to play this team again because you had no guarantees that you were going to develop these rivalries with LSU or with, Ole Miss or Tennessee or whomever in the SEC because you didn't have the history there that you had with Texas. And to pull that game off the way they did was just so many people were just so emotional about it that it really hit on a different level.
Yeah. And it, for me, I didn't know anything about Texas until that 2000 Cotton Bowl.
Right.
And it was one of those that, I was a young kid and, and doing all that research and everything. And then you have the game in 03. And of course, we'll cover all these in part 2.
Sure.
But the budding rivalry for this thing as we're closing this thing out started in the 60s.
Yeah. That was the base for it. And it just kind of grew from there. And even with Texas dominating in the 70s, I mean, they won 72 through 78, but you had some really close games in there, a lot of heartbreakers. You had, let's see, what am I looking for here? 75, Texas wins 24-18. 77, which the 77 team for Arkansas was the team that went on to upset Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl in one of the biggest bowl upsets in the history of college football. Texas wins that game 13-9 in Fayetteville. Another heartbreaker. It's just all the way through the 70s they dominated. Arkansas got a little bit of revenge in the 80s, and then to win that last game, that really helped a lot of Hog fans cope with some of that heartbreak that they had dealt with. And then they didn't get those feelings again until what you talked about with the 2000 game. And like you said, we'll go more into detail on that, but that really rekindled that old flame of the rivalry because they made a big deal out of it. They brought Frank Broyles and Darrell Royal out, who were huge friends. I mean, if you know the backstory on those two were really good friends away from the game. And to rekindle all that in the first game of the millennium, which that's a historical fact about the Arkansas-Texas rivalry too.
We were the first college football game of the new millennium.
Yes. I mean, if you think about this, so you had the first game that was moved, basically a made-for-TV game. You had the first game that was moved to the end of the season for television purposes in 69. You had the largest margin of victory of an unranked team over a number one ranked team in 1981. And then you have the first game of the new millennium.
Okay,
how many rivalries can say something like that?
This is going to blow you away, MC, on our final note here. I don't think Arkansas is cursed. I just think they got a good string of bad luck.
Maybe so, man. I mean, it's one of those things. If it wasn't for bad luck, they'd have no luck at all.
It's like that old Clint Black song, "Good Run of Bad Luck."
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we've definitely had our share over the years in this series.
We are going to be doing more of these throughout the season, throughout our season for basketball because
that one's going to be fun.
Basketball coming up on the horizon that starts as of this recording. It will start tomorrow night. Wednesday night. But make sure you guys stay with ITHP across all of our social medias. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast channel and make sure that you guys follow the Dave Ellswick Show, because there's some big news coming out of that regarding ITHP. I'm on there every Friday at 9 a.m. talking all things Arkansas, and MC pops in from time to time talking basketball with basketball on the horizon, and not to mention in the spring, baseball. And I know Jesse's getting excited about it. But boys, as we're getting out of here tonight, Jesse, final thoughts from you, man.
Texas is a rival, even if they don't understand it. We're not going to count this year.
This year's a wash.
Yeah, I'm in burn it down mode already this year. Love playing Texas. As much as I hate Texas, I do love playing Texas. It's not only a football rival, but a family rivalry for me. So, love doing these podcasts. Look forward to doing some more. Y'all stick around, and especially, I think a lot of our fan base is around mine to MC's age.
Mm-hmm.
Get your pops or your uncle or your grandpa to listen to these. They'll enjoy these.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
When we start talking old football, I know my best friend, he had his dad listen. His dad absolutely loved the curse episode. So,
well, and I'll tell you, we might want to revisit that cursed episode now, because it may just be a good run of bad luck, man. I'm just telling you.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's more to it there. Maybe we can maybe we get some of these old heads and we talk to them. Maybe I can get my uncle to do a little session on his take on the curse.
That'd be fun. That would be fun. MC, final thoughts before we get out of here.
Man, I love this series with Texas. I hate losing to them as much as I hate losing. Just losing to Texas is just hits different, and it
just stings a little bit worse.
It does. It's just and it. I don't know why. I mean, I was just born into it that we hate Texas. That was just what I was told. I was never given a reason. I never questioned it. It was just like, yes, sir, we hate Texas.
Yeah, I mean, that's
and that's the way I'm instilling that and a few other teams into my kids as well.
I know my daughter is 15, and she's a new Arkansas fan. She's just been watching the games with me here recently, and she's even throwing up the horns down sign. So I know I've done something right. But, hey, check us out Thursday, 7 p.m. Basketball is officially on the horizon. Other than that, for Marcus MC Carlton, Jesse the Beard Thurman, I'm Razorback Zach. Stay tuned for more episodes right here on the podcast from Inside the Hog Pen.